Well, as we heard there, some challenges ahead for the ANC's new leadership. The party's National Development Plan was meant to grow the country's economy and create jobs. It's done neither. CGTN Sumitra Nydoo has that story.
It's been 5 years since the master plan was launched in 2012. The blueprint was meant to boost economic growth by 5% and create millions of jobs. Instead, unemployment has risen to 28%. And economic growth is floundering around 1/3%.
NDP never took off, really, because the very champion who ought to have led the drumbeat for it was not involved in its making and was indifferent after it was in place.
The NDP is a comprehensive document detailing strategy to address the imbalances of the past and improve the lives of all South Africans. But experts say the plan is based on 5 to 6% growth.
One of the big problems with NDP is that when they talk competition, they only ever focused on sectors where they felt government had a monopoly. Meaning it was a way of introducing background privatization to say, you know what, we're going to talk about competition in the economy. We're not going to talk about the fact that there's collusion, there's cartels, there's cartel behavior. We have got, 6 banks. No one wants to talk about the financial sector.
The economy growing at less than 1% makes the plan unworkable.
The National Development Plan is based from the already existing policy framework. And this is the policy framework that has been there since 1996, which has created unemployment, poverty, inequality, poor standards of living, high cost of doing business. Nothing has changed.
It needs to be given a new lease of life. It needs to be revamped. And some new macroeconomic policies need to be dealt with in the context of this demand for a speedier transformation, a need for a growing economy that produces employment.
Analysts often praise the ANC for its strong policy, but they're equally critical of the party's lack of implementation and follow-through.
We need to revisit this document. It is failing us. And unfortunately, going forward, the people of South Africa are starting to run out of patience. They no longer want to hear excuses now. They want solutions.
The new ANC president will have to rethink policy and find the right people to ensure immediate implementation or run the risk of dragging South Africa further away from the prosperous nation it once was. Sumitra Nydoo, CGTN, Johannesburg, South Africa.
Well, let's get you more perspective now on this entire process. I'm joined live from Johannesburg again, this time by Ferial Hefferji. She's the editor-at-large for Huffington Post South Africa. Ferial, thank you very much for joining us. First off, there seems to be a disconnect between President Zuma's calls for unity and an end to infighting, while he's also the cause of some of that. What's your take on that?
And that's perfectly on show at the ANC conference today. It's been delayed by an entire day, largely because of the factionism and the infighting. And this is while a nation sits on the edge of its seats waiting to hear who will be the next ANC president, because until our system doesn't change, it's very likely that that's going to be our next president.
And there are concerns that the two front-runner candidates are perhaps not the best that the ANC has to offer. Why are they the front-runners?
Well, I'm not sure that I agree with that. Cyril Ramaphosa has a very long history of leadership in South Africa. He helped birth our our constitution, which has done very many good things for our country. He was a trade union leader. He's been, until recently, a very well-known business leader. So really a figure of some longevity in South Africa. Nkosazana Dlamini Zuma, she may not have been the most charismatic candidate on the stumps, but she was the person who brought an effective healthcare system to South Africa as health minister. I know that her tenure at the African Union was a checkered one, but back home she also helped craft our Home Affairs Department, which gives out birth certificates, passports and identity documents, into quite a modern machine from the apartheid behemoth which we had inherited.
And there are concerns that the ANC may splinter ahead of the 2019 elections. It's been in power since 1994. How much transformation does it need to remain in power?
It is a very riven, a highly divided organization. I would say that that division is expressing itself in how this race is looking. I think it's divided almost down the middle. And yes, it would be correct to say that I think that if Cyril Ramaphosa does not win, there are a very substantial number of people within the ANC, your veterans, what's left of the Mandela generation, many of the old leaders who have left in disillusion, left active service in disillusion, who are thinking and talking and planning quite assiduously for a dramatic and democratic breakaway from the ANC. But it's also worth noting that there have been 3 such splinters or splits away from the ANC, and none of those parties have managed to garner a significant amount of support when it has come to elections. The one that's been most successful, and possibly because it's made up of young people, is Julius Malema and his army of people who wear red overalls. They really have found resonance with young and even older voters.
Okay, thank you very much for that. That was Ferial Heffergy there, the editor-at-large for the Huffington Post in South Africa. Thank you for your analysis.